Let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. What if everything you were taught about money, everything your parents told you, everything your school drilled into you, everything society celebrates as financial success, what if almost all of it was wrong? Not slightly off, not missing a few details, but fundamentally, structurally, dangerously wrong. Because here's the thing most people never stop to ask: how does money actually work? Not where to save it, not which stocks to buy, not how to budget your groceries, but at its core, at its foundation, what is money really? Where does it come from? Who controls it? And why, no matter how hard millions of people work every single day, most of them will never feel truly free? That's what we're going to talk about today, and I promise you, by the end of this, you will never look at a dollar bill the same way again. Let's start at the very beginning. Think about a time in your life when you wanted something badly: a car, a house, a better life for your family, and you worked incredibly hard to get it. You put in the hours, you made sacrifices, you told yourself that if you just earned enough money, things would change. And maybe they did, a little, but somehow the finish line kept moving. The salary went up, but so did the expenses. The savings grew, but so did the anxiety. There was always something eating at the money, always a reason why enough never felt like enough. That feeling isn't an accident, it isn't a personal failure. It is the result of a system that most people were never taught to understand, because the people who built it benefit enormously from your confusion. Money, at its absolute core, is a technology. That's the first thing you need to understand. It is not inherently valuable. You cannot eat a dollar bill. You cannot build a shelter out of a bank statement. A coin by itself, sitting on a desert island with no other human beings around, is worthless. Money only works because of a shared agreement between people, a collective belief that this piece of paper or this number in a screen represents something real and tradable. That agreement is called trust, and that trust is the most powerful force in the entire financial system. Without it, every bank in the world collapses overnight. Without it, your salary becomes meaningless. The entire global economy, trillions of dollars, billions of transactions every single day, runs on nothing more than collective human belief. Now here's where it gets interesting, because if money is just a shared belief, who gets to create it? You might think the answer is simple. The government prints money, right? The Treasury, the central bank, the Federal Reserve in America, the Reserve Bank in other countries. And yes, they do print physical currency. But here is the part that will genuinely shock you. The vast majority of money in existence today was not created by any government. It was not printed. It did not come from a vault. It was created by commercial banks, the same banks where you keep your savings account, and it was created out of absolutely nothing. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is basic banking economics, and it's something the Bank of England itself explained clearly in a 2014 report. Most money in the modern economy is created when banks make loans. Let that sink in for a moment. When you walk into a bank and ask for a loan, the bank does not go into a room full of other people's deposited cash and hand you their money. The bank simply types a number into a computer. It creates a deposit in your account. It writes an asset on its books, the loan you owe them, and simultaneously creates a liability, the money in your account. In one keystroke, money that did not exist 5 minutes ago now exists. And here's the part that will keep you up at night. You now owe that bank real labor, real time, real years of your life to repay that money, plus interest, money that the bank created in seconds. You will work real hours at a real job, producing real value to repay a debt that was created from nothing. If that doesn't make you stop and think, nothing will. Now you might be asking, well, doesn't that mean banks can just create unlimited money? And the answer is almost, but not quite.
Banks are regulated. They have reserve requirements and capital ratios they must maintain. Central banks set interest rates that influence how freely banks lend. Governments set rules around what banks can and cannot do. But here's the critical thing. These controls are imperfect. They are constantly lobbied against by the banking industry, and they shift based on political winds. In 2008, the world discovered just how dangerously close to unlimited bank-created money had gotten. Banks had created enormous amounts of debt, packaged it, sold it, repackaged it, and sold it again until nobody could tell what anything was actually worth. And when it collapsed, millions of ordinary people lost their homes, their jobs, their retirement savings. The banks, many of them were bailed out with taxpayer money. The system protected itself and handed the consequences to the people who understood it least. This is the first great hidden truth about money. The people who create it and control its flow are insulated from its consequences in ways that ordinary people simply are not. A bank that makes catastrophically bad decisions gets rescued because it is too big to fail. A family that makes one bad financial decision, missing a few mortgage payments during a job loss, loses everything. The game is not played on a level field, it never has been, and understanding that is not about feeling sorry for yourself. It is about seeing the board clearly so you can make better decisions within it. Because the alternative, continuing to play by rules you don't understand, is exactly what keeps most people financially trapped their entire lives. Let's talk about interest, because this is where the real story gets deeply personal. Interest is the price you pay to borrow money. It seems simple enough. You borrow $100, you pay back $110. Fair enough, right? But compound interest, interest charged on top of interest, is something that changes the entire nature of a debt. When a bank lends you money for a mortgage, the early years of your repayments are almost entirely interest. You're paying the bank for the privilege of using money it created from nothing, and very little of your payment is actually reducing what you owe. This is why a 30-year mortgage on a $300,000 house can end up costing you $600,000 or more by the time you're done. You buy one house and pay for two. That extra house, the phantom one, goes straight into the pocket of the institution that typed your loan into a computer. And this isn't just mortgages. Credit card debt operates on the same principle, but far more aggressively. The average credit card interest rate in America has climbed above 20%. If you carry a balance of $5,000 on a card at 20% interest and only make minimum payments, you will be paying that card off for years, potentially decades, and you will pay back 2 or 3 times what you originally spent. The clothing you bought, the dinner you put on the card, the emergency expense you couldn't afford, those things are long gone, but the debt lives on, compounding quietly, draining your future earnings to pay for your past. This is how millions of people get stuck, not because they are irresponsible, not because they don't work hard, but because they never understood the true cost of the system they were borrowing from.
Now let's flip the coin, because compound interest isn't just a weapon against you, it can also be the most powerful force working for you. This is something the wealthy have known for generations. When you put money into an investment that grows, whether it's a business, a stock market index, or real estate, and you allow those returns to compound over time, something extraordinary happens. A $10,000 investment growing at 8% annually doesn't just grow by $800 each year. In year 1, it grows by $800. In year 2, it grows by $864 because now you have $10,800 earning the same rate. By year 30, that original $10,000 has become over $100,000. You didn't add a single extra dollar. Time did the work. This is the fundamental difference between how wealthy families think about money and how most ordinary families think about money. One group lets money work for them. The other group works for money, decade after decade, and wonders why they never get ahead. But here's the uncomfortable question underneath all of this. Why doesn't everyone just invest? Why don't people simply put money to work for them the way the wealthy do?
The answer is both obvious and devastating. You cannot invest money you don't have. And when the majority of your income goes to rent, food, transportation, healthcare, and debt repayments with nothing left over, you have no capital to put to work. The system requires capital to generate more capital, and the people who already have capital accumulate more of it naturally, automatically, just by existing within the financial system, while the people without capital run faster and faster on the hamster wheel, generating that capital for others through their labor and their debt repayments. This is not an accident of nature. This is the designed outcome of a financial architecture built over centuries. Let's talk about inflation, because this is another thing most people feel but don't fully understand. Inflation is the gradual increase in the price of goods and services over time. It means that the money sitting in your pocket today will buy less next year than it does right now. A dollar in 1970 could buy what roughly $8 to $10 buys today. That is a staggering loss of purchasing power over time. And here is the critical insight. Inflation doesn't just happen randomly. It is deeply connected to how much money exists in the system. When more money is created through bank lending, through government spending, through central bank policies like quantitative easing, more dollars are chasing the same amount of goods, and prices go up. Inflation is, in a very real sense, a tax. It reduces the value of everyone's savings quietly, invisibly, without anyone voting on it or approving it. Now, who benefits from inflation? This is a question almost nobody asks out loud. The answer is debtors benefit from inflation and savers are punished by it. If you owe $1 million and inflation runs high, the real value of that debt shrinks over time. You're repaying it with money that's worth less. Governments, which carry enormous national debts, actually benefit from moderate inflation for exactly this reason. Large corporations that borrowed heavily also benefit. Meanwhile, the person who worked their entire life, saved carefully, put money in a savings account earning 0.5% interest while inflation ran at 4 or 5%, that person lost purchasing power every single year while feeling completely safe. Their bank account number went up, their actual wealth quietly declined. This is the quiet theft that nobody explains to you when they tell you to save more. This brings us to something even deeper, the concept of real assets versus paper assets. Money in a savings account is a paper asset. It is a claim, a promise from the bank that you can access those funds. But if the bank fails, or if the currency collapses, or if inflation eats away its value, that paper promise becomes worth less. Real assets are different. Real assets are things that hold value regardless of what happens to paper money. Land, buildings, productive businesses, commodities like gold and oil. These things exist in the physical world. They cannot be inflated away by a central bank keystroke. This is why wealthy families have always held real assets, not just bank accounts. This is why major corporations own real estate, not just cash. And this is why the financial education taught to most working-class people, save in a bank, stay out of debt, work a steady job, is profoundly incomplete. It teaches you to operate in the world of paper promises, while the truly wealthy operate in the world of real things. Let's bring this even closer to home. Think about the neighborhood you grew up in. Think about the houses your family and neighbors lived in. Now think about who owned those houses. In many cases, it wasn't the families living there. It was banks through mortgages or landlords who owned multiple properties. The people who lived in those homes provided the labor that paid the rents or the mortgage payments. They made the neighborhood livable. They built the community. But the financial returns, the appreciation in property value, the rental income, the equity, flowed to whoever held the title to the land. This is the quiet transfer of wealth that happens across generations. One family rents for 30 years and end their lives with nothing to pass on. Another family buys a home, builds equity, and passes that asset to their children, who are now 30 years ahead of where their parents started. Compounded over generations, this gap becomes enormous and nearly impossible to close without understanding the system. And here is something that rarely gets discussed in polite conversation. Wealth, real wealth, is almost never built purely through a salary. This is the most damaging myth in the financial world, the idea that if you just earn enough and save enough of that earned income, you will become wealthy. Almost nobody who has achieved significant financial freedom did it through wages alone. What they did was convert their labor income into assets and then allowed those assets to generate income of their own. A business owner doesn't just earn a salary, they own equity that grows as the business grows. An investor doesn't just save money, they own shares that pay dividends and appreciate. A real estate investor doesn't just collect rent, they hold a depreciating debt while the asset itself grows in value. The transition from income from labor to income from assets is the most important financial transition a person can make, and most people never make it because nobody shows them how and the system is not designed to encourage it. Let's talk about taxes because the tax system is another layer of the story that reveals a great deal about how money actually flows in society. Here is a fact that is both widely known and almost universally underappreciated. In most countries, income from labor is taxed more heavily than income from capital. What that means in plain language is that if you go to work every day and earn a salary, you are taxed at a higher rate than someone who simply owns assets that grow in value. The wealthiest people in the world, people like Warren Buffett, who famously pointed out that he pays a lower tax rate than his secretary, generate most of their income not through salaries, but through capital gains, dividends, and appreciation of assets they own. These are taxed at preferential rates. The message embedded in the tax code is unmistakable, even if nobody says it directly. Owning things is rewarded, working is taxed.
This is not an argument for or against any particular political view. It is simply a description of the reality of the system. And if you are going to operate intelligently within a system, the first thing you must do is understand the system's actual rules, not the version of the rules you were told about in school or at the dinner table. The actual rules reward ownership. They reward investment. They reward building things that generate value even while you sleep. And they extract the most from people who show up, trade their hours for dollars, and go home exhausted. This is not a moral judgment. It is a mechanical description of how money moves through the system. And once you see it clearly, you cannot unsee it. Now let's talk about the role of psychology in all of this. Because money is not just a financial phenomenon, it is a deeply psychological one. The way you feel about money, the beliefs you carry about what you deserve and what is possible for you were formed before you were old enough to think critically about them. If you grew up in a household where money was always scarce, where conversations about money were tense and fearful, where financial struggle was normalized, those experiences carved grooves in your thinking that influence every financial decision you make as an adult. You may self-sabotage when things go well because abundance feels unfamiliar and therefore dangerous. You may avoid thinking about money entirely because the anxiety is too great. You may spend impulsively because some part of you believes money will disappear anyway. These are not character flaws. They are predictable responses to early programming. But they are responses that can be examined and changed. The most powerful shift you can make, more powerful than any investment strategy or budgeting system, is changing the story you tell yourself about money. Moving from money is something I never have enough of to money is a tool I am learning to use. Moving from rich people are lucky or corrupt to wealthy people made choices and built systems that I can study and replicate. Moving from I could never do that to I don't understand that yet, but I can learn. These are not affirmations. They are not feel-good platitudes. They are genuinely different operating systems that produce genuinely different results over time. Two people with identical incomes and identical circumstances, but different beliefs about money, will end up in vastly different financial positions 10 or 20 years from now. That is not magic. That is the compounded result of thousands of small daily decisions shaped by those beliefs. Let's return one more time to the big picture, because there's one more piece of this puzzle that almost nothing in mainstream financial education covers: the relationship between money and power. Money is not just an economic tool. It is a social and political tool of extraordinary potency. The ability to fund politicians, shape regulations, control media narratives, and influence academic research,
All of this flows from concentrated wealth. When a handful of institutions control the majority of investable assets in an economy, they shape the rules that govern that economy. They lobby for tax treatments that benefit their asset class. They fund research that supports their worldview. They sit on the boards of universities and media companies. This is not theory. This is the documented, publicly traceable reality of how financial systems interact with political systems. And understanding this isn't about becoming cynical. It is about becoming clear-eyed. Because here is what that clarity gives you. It removes the blame you might mistakenly be placing on yourself. If you grew up without financial education, without assets, without a family network that understood investing, that is not a personal failure. That is the predictable starting point for someone who entered a game without knowing the rules. But once you know the rules, even partially, you have something you didn't have before. You have agency. You can make choices that the uninformed version of you could not make. You can stop giving your money away to compound interest and start capturing it. You can stop being purely a labor asset in someone else's system and start building small pieces of ownership for yourself. You can stop treating your savings account as a safe haven and start understanding that inflation is quietly working against you there every single day. The people who build real financial security, and this is the final most important thing I want to leave you with, are not necessarily the smartest people. They are not always the highest earners. They are not the most educated, the most talented, or the most connected. The common thread, the thing that shows up again and again in the lives of people who successfully navigate the financial world is this. They got curious. They started asking questions that uncomfortable people don't ask. They stopped accepting the surface-level explanations and started digging into how things actually work. They got comfortable with concepts that confused them at first, and they stayed uncomfortable long enough for understanding to arrive, and then they acted. Slowly, imperfectly, making mistakes along the way, but acting. Because knowledge without action is just anxiety with extra steps. You now know things that most people around you have never been told. You know that money is a social agreement, not a fixed truth. You know that most money in the world is created by banks as debt. You know that compound interest can either imprison you or set you free, depending on which side of it you're on. You know that inflation quietly destroys savings while rewarding ownership. You know that the tax system rewards capital over labor. You know that your beliefs about money are just programming, and programming can be rewritten. You know that the system was not designed for your financial freedom as its primary goal. And you know that none of this is an excuse to stop. It is a reason to start. Right now, with what you have, where you are. Because the one thing more dangerous than not knowing how money works is knowing and deciding it doesn't apply to you. The truth about money is not comfortable. It is not the story of hard work automatically leading to reward. It is not the story of savings accounts keeping you safe. It is not the story of a fair system that rewards the deserving. But it is also not a hopeless story. It is the story of a learnable game with knowable rules. And the single most powerful thing you can do with the rest of this day, with this week, this month, this year, is keep going deeper. Keep asking how. Keep questioning what you were told. Because the people who understand how money works don't just accumulate more of it, they accumulate something even more valuable. Freedom. The freedom to choose their time. The freedom to say no. The freedom to build something that lasts beyond them. That freedom is not reserved for the lucky. It is earned one uncomfortable truth at a time.